Asking DeepSeek about Sfath's explanation and prediction from Contact Report, 904 Part 6.
Can you give me an exmaple of how this could or has happened? In the future, new and extremely malicious religious fanatical aberrations will also emerge, which have occurred again and again since time immemorial, and which have led to extremely fanatical religious wars, but which will lead to numerous mass murders of entire sectarian communities in the coming period, and will shake the whole of humanity on earth. Religious fanaticism and sectarianism will also break out again and again through criminal and maliciously degenerated leading religious fanatics, and bring very evil disaster, whereby their bloody terrorism will take on such inhuman, brutal, and murderous forms, which will be as bad in brutality and inhumanity as everything in the past world war has been so far. Evil, terrible racial hatred and campaigns of revenge against people of other faiths will also break out anew, and what happened in the Nazi Empire, where the Jewish people were persecuted and murdered, will be repeated likewise 2 decades after the beginning of the new millennium, where in earlier times the Jewish people were at home in the land of Judah in the east of the Mediterranean. This will happen in the same way when a man emerges in the Jewish people who will be of the same mindset as Adolf Hitler was with regard to the extermination of people of other faiths. Thus he will be equally mass murderous against the Arabs, warlike and with absolute genocidal intent, and will have hundreds of thousands indiscriminately murdered and also destroyed militarily. But the majority of the world's population will stand idly by and let the Hitler-like man have his way, who, with the support and arms assistance of the USA, can also act in a genocidal and unscrupulous manner with his murderous army.
The scenario you describe is a deeply troubling vision of future religious fanaticism, sectarian violence, and genocidal conflict. While this specific narrative is highly speculative, elements of it can be observed in historical and contemporary trends. Below is an example of how some aspects of this scenario could or have manifested in reality: historical parallel, religious fanaticism, and genocidal violence. One of the most striking historical examples of religious fanaticism leading to mass violence and genocide is the 30 Years' War, 1688 in Europe. This conflict, fueled by religious divisions between Catholics and Protestants, resulted in widespread devastation, with entire regions depopulated and millions killed. The war was characterized by extreme brutality, including massacres, pillaging, and the destruction of communities. Religious fanaticism. The war was driven by deeply entrenched religious ideologies, with both sides viewing their cause as divinely sanctioned. This fanaticism led to atrocities committed in the name of faith, including the massacre of civilians and the destruction of religious sites. Sectarian violence. The conflict was not limited to armies, but also involved sectarian violence between communities, with neighbors turning against each other based on religious differences. Another example is the Holocaust during World War II, where Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler systematically murdered 6 million Jews as part of a genocidal campaign driven by racial hatred and ideological fanaticism. This event remains one of the darkest chapters in human history, and serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked hatred and extremism. Contemporary example: religious extremism and terrorism. In the modern era, religious fanaticism has manifested in the form of extremist groups and terrorist organizations such as Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, and Boko Haram. These groups have carried out mass violence, including massacres, beheadings, and suicide bombings, in the name of their religious ideologies. ISIS and sectarian violence. ISIS, in particular, has been responsible for widespread atrocities, including the genocide of Yazidis in Iraq, the mass murder of Shia Muslims, and the persecution of Christians and other religious minorities. Their actions have been characterized by extreme brutality, including public executions, sexual slavery, and the destruction of cultural heritage sites. Global impact. The rise of ISIS and similar groups has led to significant geopolitical instability, including the displacement of millions of people and the exacerbation of sectarian tensions across the Middle East and beyond. Future speculation. Escalation of religious and ethnic conflict. The scenario you describe includes the emergence of a Hitler-like figure within the Jewish community who would carry out genocidal campaigns against Arabs, supported by external powers such as the United States. While this specific prediction is highly speculative, it reflects broader concerns about the potential for escalating religious and ethnic conflicts in the future. Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict has already seen significant violence and suffering on both sides. Extremist elements within both communities have carried out acts of terrorism and retaliation, contributing to a cycle of violence. While there have been efforts to achieve peace, the conflict remains unresolved, and the potential for escalation remains high. Role of external powers. The involvement of external powers, such as the United States, in supporting one side of the conflict has often exacerbated tensions. For example, U.S. military aid to Israel has been a point of contention, with critics arguing that it enables aggressive policies against Palestinians. Broader implications. Indifference and complicity. A key aspect of your scenario is the indifference of the global population to acts of genocide and mass violence. This indifference has historical precedents, such as the international community's failure to intervene effectively during the Rwandan genocide in 1994, where approximately 800,000 Tutsi and moderate Hutu were killed in a span of 100 days. International inaction. Despite clear evidence of the genocide, the international community, including the United Nations, failed to take decisive action to stop the violence. This failure has been widely criticized as a moral and political failure. Media and awareness. In the modern era, the role of media and information dissemination is crucial in shaping public awareness and response to atrocities. However, misinformation, propaganda, and desensitization can contribute to public indifference. Conclusion. While the scenario you describe is extreme, it serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of religious fanaticism, sectarian violence, and the potential for genocide. History and current trends show that without conscious efforts to promote tolerance, dialogue, and accountability, societies can descend into cycles of violence and hatred. The challenge for humanity is to recognize these dangers and take proactive steps to address them before they spiral out of control.